All right. It is the British Journal of Cancer, by the way. Let's learn more about the study and the possible risks of processed meat. I'm joined by CBC medical specialist Dr. Karl Kabasele. All right. What kind of meats are we talking about? Go through the list.
Yep.
And what's in it that causes pancreatic cancer, possibly?
Well, what we're talking about are these processed meats, so everything from bacon to sausages to cold cuts. All of them, the common denominator here is a preservative called nitrite. And what the thinking here is that, or the belief is that nitrites can be converted into a cancer-causing class of chemicals called nitrosamines. And what happens is that can happen in the stomach because of the acid in the stomach. Sometimes it happens in the cooking process because of the heat of cooking the meats. But anyway, what we did know about processed meats is that there was an association with gastrointestinal cancers. But what wasn't clear is whether the pancreatic cancer, was part of that equation as well. So what these researchers did was they looked at some data. They reviewed a large number of studies and tried to figure out, was there an association? And what they did with some pretty complex statistical manipulation, they figured that processed meats will raise your risk of pancreatic cancer by about 19% for every 50 grams of this meat that you might consume.
Wow, and for, let's say, a ham sandwich, you're looking at possibly 100 grams.
That's quite possible. So just to put it in context, 2 strips of bacon is roughly 50 grams. So a big honking piece of ham may be a lot more than that.
You know what, is the study conclusive?
Well, it's suggestive. So we have this...
It's strong.
It's strong. Statistically, you can say that this finding is significant statistically. And we do have a biological mechanism that would explain it as well.
What's that mean?
Well, meaning that what we just talked about, so that the nitrites may have a connection to a cancer-causing chemical.
Okay.
And therefore, it's all kind of theoretical at this point, but statistically, it does make sense.
Okay, let me ask you this, because I noticed this yesterday. I was just buying ham yesterday. Funny you should mention it in Turkey. And I noticed behind the butcher's counter now at the grocery stores, there's a lot of natural choices. They have nitrite-free everywhere.
Right.
So did they know this was coming out, this link was being made, or nitrites cause other problems? And will that solve the problem when you're not eating nitrites?
That's an interesting question. This is not really a new phenomenon, because we've known of the association between nitrites or cold cuts, processed meats, and things like stomach cancer, colorectal cancer. There's been this sort of theory that there was a connection. And so food manufacturers, being aware of that, have tried to make products in a different way. The problem is, though, in order to make a lot of these processed meats, you need nitrites or chemicals like nitrites. So there are certain additives like celery extract, for example. You'll see that sometimes on the labels, which is actually chemically the same thing as nitrites anyway. So you have to be a savvy consumer.
So you have to ask, in place of nitrites, what have you used to preserve this meat, and then Google it.
That's exactly. You got to do your homework,
right.
And unfortunately, labels aren't always as descriptive, perhaps, as they should be.
Okay, so is it just good health practice to give up processed meats?
Well, yes, and it depends who you ask as well. So the more extreme amongst health experts will say, cut them out completely, because they have very little nutritional value, but all of these problematic characteristics, not only the nitrites, but they're often high in fat or high in salt, and these are things that obviously have other health impacts, especially when it comes to heart health.
But it's a quick way for people to get protein. It's an expensive way for it to make a sandwich.
Yeah, inexpensive way.
Yeah.
To make a sandwich, that's right. But there are other ways of getting protein, obviously. So chicken and fish, if you're going to go the animal route, and then of course you have your beans, lentils, tofu, etc., if you want to go the vegan or vegetarian route as well.
You know, it's funny, you always think of the sandwich, let's say, you know, mustard and low-fat ham and the bread, and you think, oh, that's been a staple in our diet for decades.
Yeah.
But you look at it, you break it down, think about it critically, it's really just a whole bunch of processed... I'm looking for a word other than CRAP. But,
right.
you know,
processed food.
Processed food. There's
Yeah.
nothing natural about it.
Well, especially if you're going with the white bread, so you're basically processing wheat to the point where it has little nutritional value left. And then you're right, processed meats with all of the problems there. Now, The lettuce is probably good, though. The lettuce on the sandwich and the
Great.
tomatoes are, they're
The
probably
lettuce
still
and the
good.
mustard, yum.
And the mustard, well, yeah.
You're a joy killer, Dr. Karl. CBC medical specialist, Dr. Karl Kabasele. Thank you for your good advice.
Thank you.
All right.